If you were wondering why we're starting this proxy war in Israel, all you have to do is look back in the recent past. Why else have we started wars in the Middle East over the last 30 years? Let's watch.
In October 2000, the president of Iraq, Saddam Hussein, announced they would no longer be selling oil in US dollars, only in euros. The big deal is that Iraq has the 5th largest petroleum reserves in the world, and in the 2000s, it had become the world's 5th largest oil producer. So when Hussein decided to start selling oil in euros instead of dollars, the US wasn't too happy. By February 2003, he had sold over 3 billion barrels of oil for 26 billion euros. A month later, the US invaded Iraq.
My fellow citizens, at this hour, American and coalition forces are in the early stages of military operations to disarm Iraq, to free its people, and to defend the world from grave danger.
They overthrew Saddam, and by June, just 4 months later, the country was back to selling oil in dollars. Years later, a number of U.S. officials started to let the truth seep out. Former head of U.S. operations in Iraq, General John Abizaid, said, "Of course it's about oil. We can't really deny that." Former Fed Chairman Alan Greenspan wrote in his memoir that, quote, "I'm saddened that it's politically inconvenient to acknowledge what everyone knows. The Iraq War is largely about oil," end quote. Venezuela, 2002. Coincidentally, Venezuela also has large oil reserves. In fact, they have the largest proven oil reserves in the world. But Chavez, a die-hard anti-American leader, was about to make the same grave mistake that Saddam Hussein made. He planned to start selling oil for euros instead of the mighty American dollar. Well, we can't have that now, can we? So in 2002, the US backed a coup against Chavez, which ultimately failed, but it crippled the country and its economy. Empires are built on oil. Yet despite having the largest oil reserves in the world, today Venezuela is one of the poorest economies in the world. Libya, 2009. Eerily similar to Venezuela and Iraq, Libya has the largest oil reserves in Africa, and they weren't doing that bad. They did a great job managing all those oil revenues, building up a 143-ton gold reserve according to WikiLeaks. They had the highest GDP per capita in Africa, and Libya was on track to become the most influential country in Africa. And also similar to Venezuela and Iraq, Muammar Gaddafi, the leader of Libya, suggested all Muslim and African countries buy oil from Libya using a new currency backed by their giant gold reserves instead of US dollars. In other words, they wanted to sell oil in exchange for gold instead of US dollars, and other major African governments were ready to support. But I think we can all guess what happened next. NATO led a military coalition into Libya in the name of freedom, of course. And on August 20th, 2011, Muammar Gaddafi was executed by Libyan militias, backed by US drone strikes. Years later, it was discovered in Hillary Clinton's emails that NATO really wanted to overthrow Gaddafi's government, mainly because of this plan for an African gold-backed currency, supported by Libya's oil reserves. This was Libya before, and this is Libya today. A failed state with widespread poverty and an ongoing civil war. Why? Because each of these countries tried to break away from using the dollar as payment for their oil, and each of them faced the consequences of America's wrath.